Hello, hello. Do 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 do. Do 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 do. Won't be turned around. You can stand me up at the gates of hell. All right. Do 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 do. Cool. All right. Sorry, just finishing that up, setting that up, because we're doing this via YouTube, so that's a whole thing. Bit of weird lighting. Not gonna lie. We're gonna just. I've got a new little lamp, so we're still trying to figure this out. Pale as a ghost. All right, but you didn't come here to watch some Mr. White Boy. Well, I mean, you did. If you clicked on this, you know damn well what you're getting. So yeah. Whoa, shit. I'm Endymion for the Dorked Arms, etc. And this is a janky live stream setup for an extended review of Dark Waters. I just released that video today, just posted it today. And yeah, it won't necessarily, I don't think it'll be an especially popular short, but I'm okay with that. So yeah, I've basically, let me see if that actually, okay, yeah. I basically, to jump right in, I figured that this movie would be very good for me to talk about because, let's be completely honest. I didn't think it was going to be good. I don't really like Mark Ruffalo. Like, I like him as Hulk in the MCU, but I'd never seen him in anything else. So I was kind of afraid that he was actually a bad actor. I've known Anne Hathaway basically all my life. I loved her in Princess Diaries and Princess Diaries 2. Still love those movies. And I still really enjoy Ella Enchanted, which is a bit of an underrated classic. So I'm just setting this up for Patreon real quick. A little difficult to speak. Do 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 do. Do 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 do. This is a bit of a boring stream. My apologies. But I was deeply moved by this film. Now, I was assigned this movie as part of my environmental anthropology class. And yeah, it was it was a whole thing. For one thing, I just didn't. Okay. How do I put this? I don't really like watching dramas because I think they're often melodramatic, and I think that they can be, in some cases, ahistorical and bad. So, I've just had bad experiences with dramas in the past. A lot of them have just been more or less schlock, just poorly edited or poorly written, enough to seriously disappoint me consistently. Dark Waters kind of broke that. It broke that mold. It's Mark Ruffalo's character plays a lawyer who helps big chemical companies. That's part of his job at his firm. And he is, kind of just a basic schmuck at first. But he is moved by curiosity and by the conviction of a farmer who knows his grandma in the small Virginian town that he grew up in. And he ends up taking this case and investigating basically the DuPont chemical company, and essentially trying to hold them accountable for poisoning this farmer, his family, and all of his cows. There are certain turning points, and from now, this is a spoilery video, by the way. So if you haven't seen it, be warned. There are certain turning points. The first major one is after this farmer has dropped off the tapes that he's taken examining, like, I'm gonna cut open this cow to see what's killing her, what finally did her in. He watches these tapes, Mark Ruffalo's character, and I forget his name, even though I wrote a damn essay on it. And he is intrigued and disgusted. When he visits the farmer gives him physical evidence that begins to turn his perspective a little bit. There's like a gallbladder that's swollen to the size of a watermelon, teeth that go black in the jaws of these cows, and he's lost 190 heads of cattle. So this is very serious. The second major turning point, I will say, is one of the farmer's last two cows basically starts making eyes at him and Mark Ruffalo. Farmer recognizes this, tells him, get in the car slowly. And he does. And from the car, he watches this steer kind of rear up, charge at the farmer, and get shot. And is dead. Another major turning point is when in suing for this farmer as his prosecutor, he is, by law of discovery, flooded, absolutely inundated with DuPont's files. And it's very interesting because that also sort of reflects how DuPont has this authority and economic power to be able to flood, to absolutely crush any sort of free time or whatever that this guy has. And it puts a lot of, economic stress. He fills his office with all of these unsorted files going back to like early 50s. And the thing that's very disturbing about this film is that it's not set in the 80s or the 90s. It's I think the actual earliest it gets when it's on the main plot is straight up like 2000 or 2001, maybe 2003. So it is very much a timely recent movie. And actually, at the end they reveal, hey, these background characters, yeah, they're actual people. They're some of the people who were portrayed, who were mentioned, who were named. I think that was especially moving. Now, Mark Ruffalo is an interesting character, I think. He plays it sort of tired and stressed. And so he comes off as very determined, but generally rather inexpressive, with the exception of a few moments of anger and fear. But he goes from being the pawn, again, a defendant of the DuPont conglomerate and everything, to a man who is obligated to hold them accountable. And again, those turning points kind of force him to reckon with, like, what am I doing? And if I'm going to commit to this, I'm going to go all out. I'm going to do this. Which is very interesting. And I think very much a worthwhile, sorry, a worthwhile character arc to portray, if that makes sense. I've found when it comes to stories that I like, the contrast between different characters are generally more interesting than any character alone. And I think most people would agree with that. Um, my one point of contention is, I think, how they portray Anne Hathaway's character, who plays the wife of this lawyer played by Mark Ruffalo. She is herself a lawyer who has sacrificed that career for the domestic life, for raising their baby. I honestly, it's, people do this and still do this, but I kind of have to be completely honest when I say I don't care for it. It's just sort of unnecessary. However, this being a historical piece, this being a piece of lived, like, still part of recent memory, lived memory, it's worth being accurate. It's worth it because it portrays both the plain and simple reality, and also I think they build upon how much um, this guy neglects his family in favor of pursuing justice. He neglects to raise his sons, neglects the care for his wife and the cooperation with his wife. What think I I think I don't really easily understand is the sort of plain and simple how do I put this? The plain and simple that's not even the right way to describe it. I don't think there is very much, if anything, that is really plain or simple about this. This relationship between husband and wife is not necessarily temperamental, but it is very much a uh, uh, a difficult one to navigate when the wife is sacrificed so much. The husband um, sacrifices what has been given to him. She is contributing to their marriage personally, but then he is kind of letting that wither, as it were, in favor of lifting up his career and actually jeopardizing his career for the sake of um, justice, which is a noble pursuit, but it comes at a cost. And there is tension between that. And I think it is really well portrayed, both through the dialogue, through the acting, and I think through the directing. The shock and disgust that Mark Ruffalo expresses when he, I think one of the biggest turning points is realizing where this uh, particular chemicals from DuPont, how prevalent they are. It cuts from like him reading these files and panicking, dropping them, to his wife at home, empty bed. She kind of calls out, no response. Hears some voices or hears some like racket in the kitchen. She slowly goes out. You see furniture moved, kind of tossed over, the carpeting ripped back, and it's Mark Ruffalo, and it's like ruffled and kind of crazy looking, and he's like, they're poisoning us, and she goes, I'm not having this. I'm not having this. This is not healthy. You need to stop. But there's a beauty to the nuance of their relationship, because she is insanely supportive, and he, even if he isn't as much of a presence in the lives of his sons, he respects his wife, and he wants to do right by her. Which is why he says, he doesn't angrily like go on the defensive when she says, you have to stop, you're going crazy. He goes, no, 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 hold on, let me explain, and if you're not convinced, I will drop it, absolutely, but please give me a chance to explain. And he does. And that is also a nice little point for the audience, to sort of catch up, as it were, on like the full filing process that he's been going through. And again, that's with all of the law of discovery paperwork. So DuPont, in trying to drown him in paper, has effectively given him the axe through which he will behead them, as it were. And he doesn't, obviously, because it's a corporation. Multi-million-dollar, massive synthetic chemicals company, and the toll, both the emotional toll and the psychological toll that this case takes on the both of them, and even on the firm that he's working with, because eventually it becomes so big that the entire firm, all of the leaders of the board, have to be like, can we back this up? Is this feasible as a business option? And the head of the firm says, hold on, this isn't just about profit. We're lawyers. We're supposed to be pursuing justice. This is the thing we got the job for. Let's take a damn stand. And I think that's very interesting because they very easily could have made his boss just like a hard line. We have to think about paying dividends. We have to think about stockholders. We have to think about what is sustainable for this company. I appreciate your vigor, but the firm cannot back you. It would have been so easy to do that, but people aren't, that simple. And again, there's the fact that this is an adaptation of real life events. Again, recent lived memory. Um, One thing that I definitely find interesting, though, I I don't I don't think the sort of there's a demonstration of how this risk of chemical exposure is normalized. It's demonstrated. Again, you have this. Uh, who was it? There's a philosopher by the name of Beck. Can't remember his first name. Robert Beck, I think, who wrote about risk societies, which are societies that have normalized the process of risk as a production and as the product of production in a post-war world with the chemical revolutions especially. And one of those things that it does, as I said, with the papers and with the actual idea of perceiving human lives as not really affecting the cost of producing something, either in the manufacturing process or shipping or what have you, or any other hazards that might damage those lives. All of those are externalities. This is the main reason I hate economists. They make the reality uh, of what business and industry does. They say, "Oh, that's just an externality. That's not really the issue of a business. That's not our concern." It's like, yeah, it is. You're a human. But on top of that, it's also legitimized politically. Like, they have to fight on a singular case by case basis. So it's judicially also individualized, very much like how, uh, chemical companies and, fossil fuel companies will always like spout these, oh yeah, you do your part to recycle. We can all save the planet together. It's like, you're the one doing like 90% of the pollution here, fucko. It's that reducing everything to the individual that limits how DuPont can be held accountable. But even so, that is also the means by which we get a decent story because it focuses on the lawyer, it focuses on the farmers, focuses on the real humans who are affected by this. There's one interesting moment. It's not really a turning point. His last name is Billet, I think. It's like John Billet or something. Mark Ruffalo's character goes back to a photo of one of these women who worked at DuPont while she was pregnant, being exposed to a chemical that she had to scrape these big drums of vinyl chloride or whatever, and she ended up giving birth to a child with like a cleft palate and a single nostril. And when he confronts the CEO, like they allow him to come onto their turf, and he's very stressed about this, but he keeps his cool through the meeting. And he basically closes by showing this picture and he goes, This is what you're producing. Which is interesting because this is something that happens to a lot of disabled people. You know, able-bodied or neurotypical people kind of take neurodivergent and disabled people and say, you know, they use them and dehumanize them as tools and examples of damage without acknowledging necessarily the basic humanity. Interestingly, he does this, and then like years later, he is like getting gas, and that baby, who is now a grown man, asks him like, "Hey, have you seen the game? Like, do you have it recorded or anything? Can you give me any notifications on that? I got money on riding on it or whatever." And Mark Ruffalo, Billet is just like, um, no, no, sorry. And he recognizes him. He recognizes him because he's seen the baby picture. So the guy's just like, all right, sorry to bother you. Have a good night. And Mark Ruffalo just kind of stares. He's like, that's a real human that I've used rhetorically, that I've reduced down to his disfigurement, who is more than his disfigurement and more than DuPont's effects on him that he may not even be aware of. So it's an interesting sort of reflection that even our hero can be reductive. That's kind of human habit. And I think one of the really the beautiful moment of one of the really beautiful moments, I think, is later he learns that he gets a phone call. They've been waiting, like years and years, like a decade for the results because they finally got DuPont to agree, like, we're going to get everyone in this town tested to see just the traces of chemicals that they've got in them. Excuse me. And, we're going to get the largest samples, the largest amounts of samples, and the largest experiment, as it were, with surveying chemical exposure in this town. Basically, hundreds of people, 40,000 people show up over the course of weeks and months, and they're told this is going to bring justice, this is going to help the town. But a lot of the town is relying on DuPont economically, so there's a lot of tension in there. The original farmer with the tapes, he had some nasty looks. People at the diner just sort of ignore him. They see a local newspaper that sees like upstart farmer threatens local employer or whatever. More than that, though, he gets this call. Like, he's been so stressed out. Mark Ruffalo's character, this billet guy, gets so stressed out that like he's having tremors and everything, and eventually culminates in a larger medical emergency. But he's so relieved the day he gets a phone call saying, like, we've found irrefutable proof that DuPont has been poisoning these people. Sir, we didn't even, like, we've been taking so long to just test that many samples. It's the largest sampling in American history. Thank you so much. And he goes home and he's just like, his wife instantly knows, like, sweetie, what's wrong? And he just like hugs her and cries into her shoulder, and his sons are sitting at the table like, whoa, what's going on? And it's such a fantastically moving moment. It's all of this tension and buildup with such a beautiful payoff. And there's a little more development after that. But it's everything that they fought for in court. And it's so remarkable. And they finally have scientists who aren't being paid by DuPont or whatever. And that's another bit of the risk society thing that's being demonstrated, is that it's upheld politically as well as scientifically. Um, so the scientific establishment, like all of these guys, all of these scientists are employed by the chemical companies, and they are told, find us result X through whatever data we allow you to see, which is pseudoscience fundamentally. It's neglecting critical thought. It's uh, a foregone conclusion. It's seeking answers rather than questions, and it's trying to prove an assumption rather than trying to falsify a theory and trying to challenge yourself. It is instead trying to uphold your employer's wishes. Um, the other thing that presents itself is there's an EPA report. And originally, very, very early in the movie, they think about, okay, the EPA probably has something decent to say about this. And they don't. They blame the farmer. And when Billiot, Mark Ruffalo's character is explaining to his wife, the poison of this chemical, et cetera, he talks about the experiments that DuPont carried out. He uses the real photos from those experiments that we do in fact have. Law of discovery, man. It's a real go-getter. So in terms of arcs, everything is nuanced and well acted and deeply moving. I don't think there are very many moments of brevity. It's so much like, it's just hammering into your head how powerless people are. And then at the end, this entire movie, there has been so much about you can't challenge DuPont. You can't fight them. Even your firm can't fight them. Then you have that call where, yeah, we found out DuPont has to hold up their end of the bargain. They have to monitor this community. They have to acknowledge that they did this. And very end, he's in court because a complication ensues, which I will not spoil. And it ends with Johnny Cash's I Won't Back Down, which is a very stereotypical sort of overdone song, but it fit and it worked because I fucking teared up. It was such a good movie. It is not something to watch lightly. I think it is a thought-provoking movie, and I think it is a relevant movie, certainly, especially with the ongoing climate crisis. It's not just global warming that's killing us. It's chemical exposures and everything. So yeah, I guess those are my thoughts. This is a slow, I think, very static, as you can see, ridiculous kind of stream. Got all my clothes. I'm in my closet. Never thought I'd be in the back in the. Never mind. That was a bad joke. This, I gotta figure out how to do this better. But yeah, so yeah, this is gonna go private. This stream is gonna go private, and it's gonna be available to my Patreon supporters. After tonight, it's gonna go private, and I'm gonna let this sit open for my viewers and what have you for a little while, and then I will put it to Patreon. But yeah, I have a Patreon. Link is in the chat for all of the 0 viewers we have. But yeah, anyways, I'm Endymion for the Dork at Arms, etc. And thank you. Good night, and have a good one. Oh shit! I gotta. Oh, and I haven't done this before. Okay, not really well.